The moment a family stops listening to you is the moment you learn how much they have been taking for granted. Isabel Harrison smiled as she poured wine into crystal glasses beneath the glow of the chandelier. But behind her calm expression, she was paying attention to everything. The family dinner looked perfect from the outside. The long oak table was filled with expensive dishes, polished silver, and conversations that sounded warm enough for anyone passing by the dining room doorway. Yet Isabel had spent enough years inside Harrison Estate to recognize the difference between genuine respect and polite dismissal. Tonight, she noticed it again. David sat beside her discussing trust matters with Thomas Whitmore. Eleanor listened quietly from her seat beneath the chandelier. Ethan watched the room from near the staircase. Harrison Reed remained at the far end of the table, silent as always. The discussion eventually shifted toward future estate decisions, investment structures, property management, family responsibilities. Isabel listened carefully, not because the topics interested her, because nobody included her. Once upon a time, people had asked for her opinion. Years earlier, family members would turn toward her when important decisions were discussed. Now they spoke around her as if she were simply part of the furniture. She smiled at the appropriate moments and continued serving wine. Nobody seemed to notice. That was exactly what caught her attention. The more invisible she became, the more freely everyone revealed themselves. Thomas mentioned a trust revision scheduled for review. David immediately responded. Eleanor looked uncomfortable. Harrison remained unreadable. Isabel said nothing. She simply stored every reaction in her memory. Over the years, she had learned that important truths rarely appeared in dramatic moments. They appeared in hesitation, in nervous glances, in subjects people changed too quickly. After dessert, guests slowly left the dining room. Conversations scattered through the estate. Some moved toward the library. Others disappeared upstairs. Isabel remained behind gathering glasses. As she crossed the room, she noticed several documents left near Thomas's chair. One page had partially slipped from a folder. She did not touch it. She only glanced at it while passing. 3 words immediately stood out. Supplemental beneficiary review. Isabel continued walking without changing expression. Yet her mind focused completely on what she had seen. The Harrison family rarely reviewed beneficiaries. Such discussions happened only when something significant was changing. Later that night, standing alone beside the window in her bedroom, she looked across the dark estate grounds. For the first time in years, she felt certain of something. The family believed she was no longer paying attention. That mistake would become far more expensive than any of them realized. The following morning, Isabel behaved exactly as she always did. She joined breakfast on time, exchanged polite conversation, and listened more than she spoke. Years of living inside Harrison Estate had taught her that people revealed their true priorities when they believed certain individuals no longer mattered. David spent most of the meal discussing schedules for upcoming trust reviews. Thomas arrived briefly to confirm several meetings. Ethan appeared distracted by something he had been researching late into the night. Harrison remained quiet near the window, drinking coffee while watching the grounds beyond the estate. Nobody seemed aware that Isabel had noticed the document from the previous evening. That alone made the situation more interesting. After breakfast, she walked through the mansion carrying a folder of routine household reports. To anyone observing her, she looked occupied with ordinary responsibilities. In reality, she was paying attention to patterns. Certain doors were opening more frequently than before. Thomas visited the estate twice in a single day. Sophia Bennett arrived for an unexpected consultation. Eleanor spent nearly an hour alone inside the library, something she rarely did. By early afternoon, Isabel had learned something valuable. Whatever was happening involved far more people than she initially assumed. She eventually entered the library herself. The room was empty except for rows of books, afternoon sunlight, and the faint scent of old paper. Nothing appeared unusual until she noticed a legal volume left open on a side table. She glanced down. The section discussed beneficiary amendments and inheritance review procedures. Someone had been reading it recently. Isabel closed the book and returned it to the shelf without drawing attention to her discovery. Later that evening, another opportunity appeared. While passing through a hallway near Thomas's temporary office, she overheard part of a conversation. She never stopped walking. She never turned her head, but she listened. "If the review proceeds," Sophia said, "everyone affected will eventually need to know." A pause followed. Then Thomas answered, "That depends on whether the old records can still be verified." Isabel continued down the corridor without changing pace. Her expression remained perfectly calm. Yet those two sentences confirmed what she had suspected. The supplemental beneficiary review was not routine. It was connected to something buried in the past, something significant enough to require legal verification. That night, Isabel opened a notebook she had not used in years. On the first page, she wrote 3 entries. Supplemental beneficiary review. Sophia Bennett. Old records. Then she closed the notebook and placed it inside a locked drawer. For the first time, she was no longer merely observing events. She was building a map, and every new detail seemed to point toward a secret someone had worked very hard to keep hidden. 3 days passed before Isabel found the next piece of the puzzle, and by then she had already learned something important. The people around her were becoming nervous. Not openly, not enough for anyone else to notice. But Isabel had spent years observing this family. She recognized the signs. Eleanor had become unusually quiet. Thomas now carried documents personally instead of allowing staff to move them between offices. Sophia visited the estate twice more in the same week. Even David appeared distracted during conversations that normally held his full attention. The change confirmed what Isabel already suspected. Whatever was hidden inside those old records was moving closer to the surface. On Thursday afternoon, she found herself alone in the library while rain tapped softly against the tall windows. The room was silent except for the occasional crackle from the fireplace. She selected a book from one of the upper shelves and immediately noticed something unusual. Several volumes beside it had been disturbed recently. Dust covered most of the shelf, but a narrow section remained clean. Someone had removed books from that exact spot not long ago. Isabel carefully examined the area and discovered a thin envelope pressed behind the row of volumes. There was no label, no date, no indication of ownership. She opened it slowly. Inside were several photocopied pages and a single handwritten note. The pages appeared to be estate correspondence from many years earlier. Most of the content referenced legal reviews and trust considerations. One name appeared repeatedly: Lily Carter. Isabel read the name several times. It was the first time she had seen it connected directly to estate records. The handwritten note contained only one sentence: "Certain truths must remain outside the official archive." Isabel stared at the words for a long moment. Someone had intentionally separated information from the family record. Someone wanted future generations to see only part of the story. The question was why. She returned the documents exactly as she had found them. By evening, another unexpected detail emerged. During dinner, Ethan casually mentioned that he had been researching old property transfers connected to the estate. The reaction around the table was immediate. Eleanor nearly dropped her glass. Thomas changed the subject. David frowned. Harrison looked down at his plate without speaking. Isabel said nothing. She simply watched. Then, for the briefest moment, Harrison lifted his eyes and met her gaze across the room. It lasted less than a second. Yet something passed between them. Not a warning. Not a threat. Recognition. As though Harrison understood that Isabel had already started finding pieces of a story that nobody intended her to discover. The glance across the dining room stayed with Isabel long after dinner ended. Harrison had not looked surprised. If anything, he had seemed almost resigned. That realization changed the way she approached the next stage of her investigation. Until now, she had assumed someone was actively protecting the secret. Now she began to wonder whether certain people were simply waiting for it to emerge. The following week brought a steady stream of activity to Harrison Estate. Lawyers arrived. Financial advisors came and went. Meetings appeared on calendars with increasing frequency. Outwardly, everything looked routine. Beneath the surface, however, tension was building. Isabel could feel it in every conversation that ended too quickly and every question that remained unanswered. One afternoon, while reviewing household schedules, she noticed that Sophia Bennett had requested access to a restricted records room attached to the old family archive. The request itself was unusual. The archive contained documents dating back generations and was rarely visited except during major legal reviews. Isabel made no comment. Instead, she adjusted her own schedule and waited. 2 days later, an opportunity appeared. The archive room stood empty. Shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling. Boxes filled with correspondence, estate records, and trust amendments stretched into the shadows. Isabel moved slowly through the room, studying labels and dates. Near the back, she discovered a storage case containing documents that had not been cataloged within the primary archive system. Most appeared insignificant. Then she found a folder marked only with a reference number. Inside were copies of legal memoranda connected to trust restructuring discussions from more than 20 years earlier. Once again, the name Lily Carter appeared. This time, however, another detail caught her attention. Several pages referenced consultations involving a young attorney who had later become one of the estate's senior legal advisors. Someone had been discussing inheritance implications long before the current trust structure existed. Isabel carefully returned the documents and closed the folder. She had learned enough. That evening, she attended a small gathering in the library where Sophia and Thomas were reviewing upcoming trust matters. Isabel joined the conversation naturally. No accusations, no direct questions, simply observation. As the discussion progressed, Sophia mentioned that historical records often revealed mistakes families preferred to forget. The statement seemed harmless. Yet Thomas immediately became uncomfortable. Isabel noticed. More importantly, Sophia noticed that Isabel noticed. Their eyes met briefly. In that moment, Isabel understood something she had not considered before. Sophia was not hiding from the truth. She was following it. And for the first time since this mystery began, Isabel suspected she had found someone who might eventually help her reach the end of it. Over the next several days, Isabel and Sophia never once discussed the mystery directly. That was what made their growing understanding so valuable. Neither woman trusted assumptions. Both preferred evidence. During meetings, they exchanged professional observations. During family gatherings, they maintained perfect appearances. Yet Isabel began noticing a pattern. Whenever discussions approached historical trust matters, Sophia paid close attention to reactions rather than documents. She watched people, and the people she watched most carefully were Eleanor, Thomas, and Harrison. One afternoon, Sophia arrived at the estate carrying several archive requests. While reviewing paperwork in the library, she casually mentioned a discrepancy involving older trust amendments. The statement seemed harmless. David barely reacted. Ethan looked interested. Eleanor became visibly uncomfortable. Thomas immediately redirected the conversation. Isabel observed everything without saying a word. Later that evening, she wrote a new entry in her notebook. Eleanor fears the records. Thomas protects the records. Harrison accepts the records. The distinction mattered. By now, Isabel was beginning to understand that not everyone played the same role in the secret. Some people had hidden information. Others had simply allowed it to remain hidden. A few days later, Sophia requested access to supplementary legal files stored in the estate's administrative archive. Isabel volunteered to assist with organizing the materials. Together, they spent hours reviewing correspondence, amendments, and historical notes. Most of the documents revealed nothing unusual. Then Sophia discovered a reference number connected to a file that no longer existed in the official catalog. The missing file dated back more than 20 years. More importantly, the reference appeared beside the name Lily Carter. Neither woman commented immediately. Sophia simply copied the reference number onto a separate page and continued working. Isabel understood the message. The file had existed. Someone had removed it. That fact alone carried enormous significance. As they finished for the day, Sophia quietly said something that stayed with Isabel long afterward. People rarely erase records because the information is unimportant. Isabel nodded. They erase records because they are afraid of what survives. Sophia offered a faint smile. It was the first time either woman openly acknowledged they were following the same trail. That night, Isabel returned to her room and reviewed every note she had collected. The pieces were finally beginning to connect. A supplemental beneficiary review, hidden trust amendments, missing archive files, Lily Carter, fearful reactions from people who normally controlled every situation. She closed the notebook and looked out across the dark estate grounds. For weeks, she had been gathering fragments. Now she possessed something much more valuable. She had found an ally, and together, they were getting closer to the one piece of evidence someone had spent decades trying to keep buried. The breakthrough arrived when Isabel stopped looking for what was missing and started looking for who benefited from its disappearance. The idea came to her during a quiet afternoon in the library as rain drifted across the estate grounds outside the tall windows. For weeks, she and Sophia had followed documents, reference numbers, trust amendments, and fragments of correspondence. Every trail eventually led to the same obstacle. Records had vanished. Files had been removed. Names had been concealed. Yet every decision creates consequences. If someone had altered the historical record, then someone had gained an advantage because of it. Isabel opened her notebook and reviewed every observation she had collected. Eleanor feared exposure. Thomas protected procedure. Sophia pursued facts. Ethan searched for answers. David seemed unaware of the larger picture. Harrison was different. Harrison never behaved like a man protecting himself. He behaved like a man waiting. That realization stayed with her throughout the day. Later that evening, another family dinner brought everyone together beneath the chandeliers of the great dining room. Conversation moved naturally from business matters to estate projects and upcoming legal reviews. Isabel listened carefully. At one point, Ethan asked a simple question about older trust structures. The reaction was immediate. Thomas answered cautiously. Eleanor lowered her eyes. David appeared confused. Harrison remained completely calm. Isabel noticed something else. He did not attempt to redirect the discussion. He did not discourage questions. In fact, he seemed almost interested in seeing where they might lead. The observation contradicted everything Isabel had assumed. If Harrison truly wanted the secret hidden, he had countless opportunities to stop the investigation. Instead, he repeatedly allowed conversations to continue. After dinner, Isabel found herself crossing the main hallway when she noticed Harrison standing alone near a window overlooking the dark gardens. Neither of them spoke for several moments. Finally, Harrison said something unexpected. People spend too much time asking who hid the truth. Isabel looked toward him. And what should they ask instead? Harrison kept his eyes on the grounds outside. Why the truth survived. Before she could respond, he walked away. The conversation lasted less than a minute, yet it changed everything. Isabel returned to her room with a new understanding. Harrison was not the obstacle she had imagined. He was a witness, perhaps even a guardian of something larger than the family understood. She opened her notebook and added one final line beneath her earlier observations. Harrison is not protecting the secret. Harrison is protecting what happens when the secret is finally revealed. For the first time since this investigation began, Isabel felt certain she was no longer chasing the truth. The truth was moving toward her. The night before the trust meeting arrived with an unusual stillness that seemed to settle over Harrison Estate. The mansion remained busy on the surface. Staff prepared conference rooms. Legal files were delivered and organized. Vehicles arrived throughout the afternoon carrying advisors and consultants who would participate in the following day's review. Yet beneath the routine activity, Isabel sensed something else. Anticipation. The feeling that multiple people were waiting for an event they could not prevent. Earlier that day, Sophia had quietly confirmed that several historical records had finally been verified. She offered no details. She did not need to. The expression on her face revealed enough. Whatever had remained uncertain for years was no longer uncertain. That realization strengthened Isabel's confidence. For weeks, she had followed fragments of information scattered across the estate. Now those fragments were forming a complete picture. During dinner, the atmosphere felt noticeably different from previous gatherings. David appeared exhausted. Ethan seemed more focused than ever. Thomas spent much of the evening reviewing notes. Eleanor spoke very little. Harrison remained exactly as he had been from the beginning. Calm, patient, watching. Isabel found herself studying the people around the table and recognizing something important. Most of them still believed events were unfolding naturally. They thought the upcoming meeting would reveal a few historical corrections and perhaps answer several lingering questions. None of them understood how much had already changed. After dinner, Isabel walked through the library one final time. The room was empty except for the glow of a reading lamp and rows of books stretching into the shadows. She stopped beside the archive shelves where part of this journey had begun. The hidden references, the missing files, the name Lily Carter. Every clue had led here. Yet the greatest discovery was not a document. It was understanding how the family had allowed silence to become part of its foundation. Later that evening, Sophia joined her briefly. Neither woman discussed strategy. Neither needed reassurance. Instead, Sophia handed Isabel a single page containing a list of reference numbers connected to verified records. The evidence existed. The truth could no longer be dismissed as speculation. When Sophia left, Isabel folded the page and placed it inside her notebook. Then she looked out across the dark estate grounds one last time before midnight. Tomorrow, the family would gather believing they were attending a trust meeting. Isabel knew better. They were walking into a room where years of assumptions would finally collide with facts. And for the first time since this began, she felt completely prepared for whatever happened next. The trust meeting began at 10 o'clock sharp inside the largest conference room at Harrison Estate. Sunlight poured through tall windows and reflected across polished wood surfaces, yet the atmosphere felt heavier than any gathering Isabel could remember. Family members took their seats. Legal advisors organized documents. Thomas positioned several folders in front of him, while Sophia quietly reviewed notes beside the far wall. David appeared tense. Ethan seemed alert and focused. Eleanor sat unusually still. Harrison occupied his familiar place near the end of the table, observing everything without interruption. For nearly an hour, the meeting followed a predictable structure. Financial reports were reviewed. Property updates were presented. Investment summaries were discussed. Isabel listened patiently, knowing the real purpose of the day had not yet arrived. Then Thomas opened a folder that immediately changed the mood of the room. The movement was subtle, but Isabel noticed it. Eleanor lowered her eyes. David straightened in his chair. Ethan leaned forward. Sophia closed her notebook and gave Thomas her full attention. "There is a historical matter requiring formal review," Thomas announced. Silence settled across the room. He distributed copies of several verified records. Isabel accepted the documents calmly. Many of the reference numbers matched those Sophia had provided the previous evening. Years of missing information were finally entering the official record. Thomas continued explaining the chronology of trust amendments, archive discrepancies, and beneficiary reviews. No accusations were made. No dramatic claims were offered. Only facts. Yet the effect was powerful. Every verified document reinforced the same conclusion. Important information had been separated from the primary family archive decades earlier. David reviewed the pages repeatedly, as if searching for an explanation that did not exist. Eleanor looked exhausted. Ethan remained completely focused. Then Sophia presented the final verification report. The room became noticeably quieter. The historical references connected to Lily Carter had been authenticated. The missing beneficiary discussions had been authenticated. The supplemental review that Isabel first noticed weeks earlier now stood supported by evidence rather than speculation. Isabel looked around the table and realized something extraordinary. Nobody was arguing. Nobody was denying the records. The truth had advanced beyond opinion. Across the room, Harrison finally spoke. His voice was calm and measured. People often believe secrets survive because they are protected. He paused briefly. Most survive because nobody is willing to examine the evidence. No one challenged him. The documents resting on the table had already done that work. Isabel felt a quiet sense of certainty. For weeks, she had gathered fragments while everyone assumed she was being excluded from the conversation. Now the entire family was sitting inside a reality she had anticipated long before they recognized it. And she knew the most important revelation was still waiting just ahead. The room remained silent after Harrison finished speaking. No one rushed to fill the silence. The evidence spread across the conference table had already answered the questions that mattered most. Years of missing records, hidden references, beneficiary reviews, and archive correspondence now formed a complete story. Isabel looked around the room and saw something she had not seen in a very long time. Uncertainty. Not confusion. Not denial. Uncertainty. For years, members of the family had operated under assumptions they never thought to challenge. Now those assumptions were gone. Thomas carefully organized the verified documents and prepared a formal summary for the record. Sophia sat quietly beside him, satisfied that every conclusion rested on evidence rather than speculation. Ethan continued reviewing the files, determined to understand every detail. David looked exhausted, as though he had spent the morning discovering how much of the family history he had never truly known. Eleanor remained seated, her expression carrying both regret and relief. Then Isabel finally spoke. Her voice was calm. "The remarkable thing is not that the truth was hidden," she said. The remarkable thing is how many people convinced themselves they no longer needed to look for it. Several people lowered their eyes. No one disagreed, because everyone understood she was right. The missing records had never been impossible to find. They had simply been ignored for too long. Isabel glanced toward Harrison. For weeks, she had followed clues while others assumed she was uninvolved. She had watched conversations, studied reactions, connected fragments, and allowed people to underestimate her. In doing so, she had learned something valuable. The greatest advantage in any family is often invisibility. When people stop taking you seriously, they stop hiding their intentions. Harrison offered the faintest smile, as though he understood exactly what she meant. By late afternoon, the meeting finally concluded. Formal reviews would continue. Historical records would be updated. Questions that had remained unanswered for decades would no longer remain buried inside forgotten archives. As family members slowly left the room, Isabel remained behind for a moment. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows and illuminated the documents spread across the table. She thought back to the dinner where this journey had begun. The night she realized people were speaking around her instead of to her. They believed exclusion had weakened her position. In reality, it had given her the freedom to observe everything. Isabel gathered her notebook and quietly closed it. The trap had never been designed to destroy anyone. It had been built to force the truth into the open. And now that truth belonged to everyone.